So, when an accident happens at work, that investigation, it's absolutely critical. But here's the thing. What if that investigation misses the point completely? What if it just, sets the stage for the next accident? Well, today, we're going to get into how to do a real root cause analysis, the kind that actually stops people from getting hurt. All right, let's jump right in.
Okay, to really get why this matters so much, let's kick things off with a little scenario. Picture this. You've got a busy warehouse, things are moving, it's a totally normal day on the loading dock, until it isn't. Suddenly, a worker slips on a wet spot right there by the dock. And I mean, they go down hard, ends up with a fractured wrist. So they do an investigation. It takes, maybe 20 minutes?
And the conclusion they come to? It seems pretty simple, right? The worker wasn't paying attention. So the fix? Retrain the guy on floor safety. Problem solved. Or is it?
Yeah, not so fast. Just 2 months later, in the exact same spot, another worker slips. This time, the injury is even worse, a broken ankle. So what's going on here? Why did this happen again? It's because that first investigation, it never bothered to ask the most important question of all. Why was the floor wet to begin with? They stopped right at the surface. And believe me, that's a huge mistake. See, if you want to stop accidents from happening over and over, you have to dig deeper. You've got to look below the surface, past the obvious stuff, to figure out what's really driving the problem. A great way to think about this is like an iceberg. Seriously. The part you see sticking out of the water, that's the immediate cause. That's the unsafe act, the wet floor in our story. But the real danger, the massive part of the iceberg, is hidden underwater. Those are the root causes, the system failures, the bad procedures, the management gaps, all the things that created the hazard, and just let it sit there, waiting for someone to slip. And it's not just me saying this. Let's look at how OSHA defines a root cause. They call it a fundamental, underlying, system-related reason. And you got to pay attention to that last part, system-related. That little phrase changes everything. It shifts the entire focus away from blaming a person and puts it squarely on fixing the system. This chart here, it lays it out perfectly. When your investigation only asks what happened or how it happened, you're just going to get a quick temporary fix. You clean up the spill, you put up a sign. But when you start asking that fundamental question, why? That's when you uncover the path to making real systemic changes that stop the problem for good. All right, so how do we actually get to that why? Well, a fantastic place to start is with a tool that's super simple but incredibly powerful. It's called the 5 Whys. It's exactly what it sounds like, a technique designed to force you to dig past the obvious symptoms. Let's run our warehouse accident through it. Ready? Number 1, why did the worker slip? Because the floor was wet. Easy enough. 2, why was the floor wet? Because hydraulic fluid was leaking from a dock leveler. Okay, we're getting somewhere. 3, why was it leaking? The hydraulic seal was shot. It had totally deteriorated. 4, why did the seal deteriorate? Because checking it wasn't on the maintenance schedule. And here's the big one, number 5. Why wasn't it on the schedule? Because the procedure was written way back in 2008 and nobody ever updated it when they installed the new equipment. Bam! The root cause isn't the wet floor. It's an outdated maintenance program. And this right here is exactly why just saying the worker was careless is such a dead end. It slams the brakes on the investigation right when it should be hitting the gas. A good investigation always has to ask, why was that worker put in that position to begin with? Now, look, the 5 Whys technique is amazing for these kinds of straightforward problems, where there's a pretty clear line from A to B to C. But what about more complex accidents, when there are multiple things going wrong all at once? Well, that's where its simple, linear approach can sometimes oversimplify things and miss the bigger picture. So when things start getting messy and complicated, we need to pull out some bigger tools from our toolbox. Let's check out a couple of methods that are built specifically for mapping out those tangled, interconnected causes. Because let's be real, most big accidents don't have just one single cause. It's usually a bunch of things failing at the same time. So what do you do then? What happens when the path isn't a straight line, but branches out in all these different directions? Well, that's where something called a fishbone diagram comes into play. You might also hear it called an Ishikawa diagram. It's basically a visual brainstorming tool. It helps your team map out all the possible causes of a problem in a really organized way. You write the problem, the effect, at the head of the fish, and then all the potential causes branch off like the bones of its skeleton. These bones are typically grouped into standard categories to keep the brainstorming focused. You've got things like people, equipment, process, materials, environment, and so on. So for our warehouse slip, under equipment, you'd put the leaking dock leveler. Under process, you'd have that outdated maintenance procedure. And maybe under environment, the team realizes the lighting in that area is terrible or there's no drainage. When you fill this out, you start to see that the accident wasn't just about one leak. It was a whole system of failures. Now, for really high-stakes events, I'm talking explosions, chemical spills, major collapses, investigators need an even more rigorous tool. This is called fault tree analysis, and it's different. It's a top-down method. You start with the absolute worst-case scenario at the top, and you work your way down, mapping out every single little failure, whether it's a part breaking or a human error that could possibly lead to it. It gets pretty technical for sure, but in high-hazard industries, it is absolutely essential for preventing disasters. Okay, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter which one of these fancy tools you use, the 5 whys, the fishbone, whatever, the analysis itself is totally useless if it doesn't lead to real action. The whole point of this exercise is to make a change that actually sticks. And you can really see the difference here between the kind of fixes you can make. On one side, you've got your surface level actions. This is like slapping up a wet floor sign. It's just a Band-Aid, right? But on the other side, you have systemic actions, like totally revamping the maintenance program. That is a real solution. One's a flimsy little barrier, the other is a concrete wall.
And this brings us to the most important takeaway of all. The quality of your fix is 100% tied to the depth of your investigation. A shallow investigation will always give you a weak, superficial fix. If you want a solution that is actually going to prevent the next accident, you have no choice but to do a deep, thorough root cause analysis. When you start doing this consistently, it leads to something much bigger. It's a fundamental shift in how you think about safety. You move from a culture that's just reacting and cleaning up messes to one that's proactive and preventing them from ever happening. And the absolute cornerstone of that kind of culture is this simple but powerful idea. The point of an investigation is never to find someone to blame. The second you start pointing fingers, the learning stops. Real improvement comes from understanding why a certain action made sense to a person in that moment, and then fixing the system that set them up to fail in the first place. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Think about your own workplace. Are you hunting for blame, or are you hunting for solutions? Because honestly, the answer to that question changes everything.